Think the IRS will never find you? Think again. My guest today is Robert Nordlander, a former IRS criminal investigation special agent who spent more than 20 years tracking people who thought they got away with it. Today, he's revealing how the IRS actually finds you.
I grew up in North Carolina. I grew up with Tar Heel basketball and barbecue. That's kind of where I grew up. Been in North Carolina for like 50 years now, about 55 right now. So 50 out of 55 years have been in North Carolina.
How was your childhood?
It was good, great, wonderful, great set of parents. Got a nice sister. Couldn't ask for anything better. So I had good parents, a good childhood. So there's no drama, no trauma. Just loving parents, and still today, great parents.
Were they in law enforcement at all?
No. My dad was an accountant, and my mom was a secretary. So my dad said, if you get an accounting degree, you can go anywhere around the world and get a job. And I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting because he was a CPA. And I was like, all right, you can go to law school, you can do this, you can do that. Fine. So when I graduated out of high school, I went ahead and got a degree in accounting just because I wanted to, number one, have the skill set. It seemed to be natural for me. Number two is I wanted to be an FBI agent when I was growing up because, FBI gets all the publicity and that type of thing. And so sure, why not? They hire accountants and lawyers. That's what I wanted to be. But when I graduated out of college early at 20. So I just decided just to go in the CPA world for a little while and just hold off for a little bit. So
why law enforcement in general for you?
I probably watched too much Chips growing up as a kid. I mean, it's a little after your age, but you're in the 30s.
Chips, yeah.
But yeah, Chips. Like, I wanted to be a motorcycle cop when I was, when I was 6 years old. Of course, it's Chips. I watched too much Chips and too much Miami Vice, and I just loved it, even to the point where I became a reserve deputy sheriff in North Carolina in the mid '90s. So I would be a CPA during the week and play cops and robbers on the weekend. But that's what I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I just knew I liked it. So how do you marry law enforcement with accounting? And I knew the Bureau, the FBI did it, but I did not know the IRS did it. And for some reason, since the beginning of the internet, I saw a website that said IRS criminal investigation, accounting, and law enforcement. I said, that's me. So I went ahead and applied and got the job and started a 20-year career with it.
What did you focus on when you were a CPA? Was there a specialty?
When I was a CPA in public accounting, it was everything: audits, reviews, we call compilations, doing the financial statements, doing tax returns, getting penalties removed from the IRS, anything and everything. You kind of like did a jack of all trades. You just learned about everything. So there's no particular niche. It was just me and my dad working together in the public accounting firm. It really was his firm, and I just happened to be working for him and got a good education, good experience doing all that. But it really wasn't my passion to be a CPA in that type of world. All you do is books and records every month, same thing over and over and over and again. So I decided, I needed a change. I was in politics for a little while, city councilman, one of the youngest city councilmen in the state. So I was stuck there for 4 years and then lost re-election and said, what do I want to do when I grow up at 28? And then I decided to join the IRS, and they hired me.
Do you think having that perspective as a CPA before going into the IRS was crucial for you?
Absolutely. I know the perspective of what a tax return looks like, what the pressures are, what records a CPA should have and shouldn't have. We all have those clients that are kind of like weird. You kind of know there's no way they make $30,000 a year and drive a Mercedes like that and live in this big house. You know something's weird, but you still prepare to return just because, it's what they gave you. So I knew those stories. So when I came into the IRS, I already had the tax preparation background, looking at financial statements, redoing the books and records, had all that background and all the tax knowledge. So when I went to the IRS, it kind of the training was kind of easy for me because I was already a law enforcement officer before I got there. So I knew how to do search warrants and stop a car and everything else. And I knew the CPA world. So for 6 months, it wasn't that bad, of the training. And I didn't really have to learn too much other than some policies and procedures. And then once I got out, went to Alabama.
How long has the IRS Criminal Investigation Division been around for?
I think 1917, I think it is. They've been around since the Internal Revenue Code was enacted.
Oh, so they started it right away.
Yes, yeah, it was called the Intelligence Division, which is kind of ironic, right? Or Intelligence Unit, yeah, so that's what it was. But if you didn't know, the IRS did not have accountants per se. The first special agents in the IRS were postal inspectors. That's where they got them from. And when they built the agency at the beginning, it came from the postal inspectors. They're the ones that started it, and then it became what it is today.
No, now were those postal inspectors specialized in accounting, or?
I have no idea what their specialized was, but I do know that soon after that, the Al Capone stuff came out, and the the Lindbergh baby kidnapping came out, and that's when IRS CI really started taking off in publicity-wise. They have a skill set that no other agency has. People talk about the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, and the people don't know an IRS special agent is on par with those same agencies. So when you see gun toter, Secret Service, gun toter, FBI, there's a gun toter accounting nerd, okay, like me, who have a skill set that looks at books and records. You can do a search warrant, and the DEA look at a bank statement going, oh my God, it's a bank statement, leave it alone. They're looking for drugs. IRS, we see a bank statement going, oh yeah, love it. It's a special love that you have for books and records, and just putting the pieces of the puzzle together.
Why did they send you to Alabama?
When they sit there and say, hey, congratulations, you're being hired, pick which city and state you want. There's positions available. Mine was number 6, Alabama. And for some reason they messed up my paperwork. So I got, instead of number 1 and number 2 in my category or my pick, I got Alabama. It's like, I'll take it, because to get a federal job is like huge. You spent years trying to go through the process and the background. So there's no way I'm going to debate over, well, I don't want Alabama, I want some other state. No, thank you very much for the job. Where do you want me to go? And so I was there for 5 years and then moved back to North Carolina.
What did your dad think about you joining the IRS? Was it kind of like the enemy in a way?
No, he loved it. He actually loved the idea. He says because of that experience, you will be a commodity even when you get out. So you know exactly how the sausage is made. You know exactly how things are working. And he's very, very true. With the skill set that I have today, I deal with people constantly who have problems with the IRS, whether criminally or civilly. And I know how things work. I know the processes and everything else. And that's why I get paid good money, is because you understand who to call, what they can and cannot do, what the pressures that the IRS employees are under. So if you understand all that, you can kind of navigate the waters trying to get your client the best deal possible.
It's like prosecutors who become self-defense attorneys.
Exactly. Same concept, right? You want a defense attorney that maybe was a federal prosecutor because they understand exactly how things work and shouldn't work.
Now, when you're stationed in Alabama, are you just focusing on federal cases in Alabama, or could you be attached to other cases in the United States?
Good question. It's really an efficiency issue. Typically, you'll have a case in Alabama. You work in Alabama because the federal prosecutors are in Alabama. You do interviews in Alabama. Your coworkers you're dealing with. Could I do a case in Chicago? Probably, but why? If Chicago can do they're not going to fly me to Chicago the whole time to do interviews. They're going to have the local agents do it. Now, there are times where you have to fly out or travel out because it's an important interview. We call key witness interview. You have to do that. But for the most part, I'd say 95% of your time is really in your same local area.
What kind of cases did you start out working on?
Identity theft was one of them, and what they call false tax returns or false claims. My first case was a lady who was getting IDs that were true IDs but under false pretenses. So she'd find some homeless people, pay them money, and then she would turn right around and get them to get a temporary driver's license, which in Alabama was very, very easy, unfortunately. The temporary driver's license looked like a construction paper. I mean, it was so easy to create. It's pitiful. It really was at that time. And she would go in there and get their birth certificate, somebody else's birth certificate, say, I'm so-and-so, and then she would use that and then type up a false W-2 that had low wages and high withholdings. So then she'd go to the H&R Block or Jackson Hewitt and say, this is so-and-so. He has a return. He can't talk very well, and she'd do all the talking. And she would end up getting a large refund sent to her P.O. box. So when I was going through all this stuff, I was finding, oh, this driver's license looks like this one. It's a fraudulent driver's license in some cases. Some cases it was really used. Anyways, just did that case and then ultimately did a search warrant. Found the old ribbon. If you know what typewriters, they have typewriters, they have a ribbon on it. Found the ribbon that she was used to type the false W-2s on. And then we can look at the ribbon and say, okay, she actually typed this because it goes backwards. You can sit there and say, this ribbon can be tied to this W-2. So you can put more evidence together to figure out exactly she was the culprit. I had other evidence, but it's one piece of the puzzle that said that she was doing all this stuff.
How did a case like that come across the IRS desk?
There's something called a funny box in the IRS. When they have service centers, which is just huge buildings around the United States, you send your return to. Now most of it's electronic. You would send to, and then there was something in the box, and you're like, this doesn't look right. And so they put it what they call it a funny box. And then there are times where that funny box somehow gets to Alabama going, okay, there's some weird stuff going on. Some of it's data mining. For example, if all the refunds are going to the same P.O. box, that's weird. There shouldn't be 100 tax return refunds going to the same P.O. box. So you can do it that way. I think that case came from data mining or the funny box. But anyways, that's kind of how it started, because a lot of the money is going to the P.O. box. And when you start looking up backwards the P.O. box, give me all the returns going to this P.O. box 123. And you get a list. Oh, okay. And then you start going down that list and saying, okay, I got to interview this person, who prepared this return, pulled that return, and start following the leads.
What do you think is the most common funny box item that appears that's an instant flag?
There are what they call tax protesters. We're not allowed to call them tax protesters to the IRS. We're call them constitutionally challenged. So they'll sit there and say, I have this Social Security straw man. You're holding my money. I want $1 million refund. And sometimes the IRS will actually approve it. And some guy gets $1 million check or a deposit. It's ridiculous. But those go into the funny box. And that's technically a crime to try to get money out of the IRS that you never were owed to begin with. But you bombard the IRS enough, they'll give you the money. And then the IRS has to go chase it after it. But a lot of times those are in the funny boxes, are those tax protesters. And they just bombard the system.
So what, are they just putting a huge loss to get a refund? Or?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, then they just sit there and say, 1099, if you know what 1099 is, right?
Yeah, of course.
I get a 1099. Oh, by the way, I made $1 million on this 1099, but I had $800,000 withheld as 1099. I want my money back.
Oh, they're saying that was withheld for taxes.
Yes, I want my money back. And the IRS sometimes is so dumb that they'll actually issue the money. There's people, if you Google this, there's people out there. Now, they went to prison, by the way, but there's people out there that do this stuff. And they only have to hit the lottery one time, but they'll bombard the system. And all of a sudden, then the IRS CI has to go find these people and prosecute them. And the money's gone. I mean, they spend it on tattoos and big screen TVs, usually, they just waste it.
And how much time will a person like that usually do?
It depends on the circumstances. Usually judges have a very low tolerance of people who do stuff like this. It'd be a couple years. Easily, because it's based upon what you try to get, not necessarily what you got. So if you bombard the system, let's say for $1 million, but you only end up getting $50,000, the judge typically will sit there and say, $1 million is what you tried to get, so they'll put you at $1 million level versus a $50,000 level. You may owe the IRS $50,000, but you're going to go to prison for this. It's sort of like robbing the bank. Yeah, you tried to get a lot of money, but you only got X. So
now there's probably a lot more safeguards in place for this now than there was back in the 90s.
You would think.
There's not.
You never underestimate the IRS's ability to screw things up. That's all I'll tell you. And then act like the victim.
Now, how long do they have to prosecute you? Is it just 5 years, or how does that work?
Tax crimes are 6 years technically.
So someone could, if they make it the whole 6 years, they're safe in the clear.
Yes, the statute of limitations is 6 years on a tax crime. But if it's a conspiracy is when 2 or more people to get together to do this type of thing. A conspiracy would be 5 years after the last bad thing you did. So you could do this for 6 years and all of a sudden stop, and then all of a sudden now it's 6 years after that when you quit doing it. So yeah, it's 6 years, or 5 years on conspiracy, 6 years on tax crime.
Now, what about the people that actually do make the money but then lie about how much they made in that regard to filing a false tax return?
Well, there's a lot of them out there. In particular, there are small business owners. Rarely is it it's kind of hard to hide money when you're a W-2 employee working at Whole Foods or Lowe's Hardware or anywhere else, right? You made $30,000 a year. It's kind of hard to really cheat on taxes that is worth the people's time. Usually it's the small business owner who has a couple employees, the contractor. They're notorious for it. They are the ones that are hiding their income, whether through not reporting all their income, sales, or deducting things they shouldn't be deducting, like their trip to Disney World or the kids' private school tuition, or the wife may have a shopping problem and they just deduct every Victoria's Secret, corporate credit card charge and office supplies, or you want to call it. That's how they get themselves in trouble.
And how did those people come on your radar?
Good question. The IRS special agent is evaluated based upon his ability to find these cases. So it just depends on your ability to find them. I've done things such as read newspaper articles. I've done things such as data mining. I'll give you an example. Do you know what the earned income tax credit is?
Yeah, is that the one based on how much money you make? You can
Yes,
get?
if you're too poor and you're what we call working poor, the IRS will give you money for just forget about money you put into the system. They'll give you money for being the working poor. Congress allows it, they do it. But if I went to the most expensive zip codes in this state and I said, data mine for me all the zip codes, this expensive zip code, and every single person in the most expensive zip code is getting the earned income tax credit, right? That's claiming to make $30,000, which is very, very rare, right? Give me a list of all those. I can get a pretty good list. That net is so small, that net is wide enough, but I'm catching the potential tax evaders in that net, and it makes my list a lot easier to go through. And if someone gets an earned income tax credit for 1 year, no big deal. If they're getting it for 4 or 5 years and they live in $1 million house, and then you realize that they're a construction owner or a small business owner, now we're on to something. No one can have that lifestyle compared to what we're reporting to the IRS. That's an easy one to find. I've actually done how many houses were purchased in a county or counties that were over $1 million. Now this is back early in the 2008, something like that, right? And got a list of all the houses that were purchased over $1 million for a couple years. And then I had my staff say, okay, give me all the returns of these people who bought $1 million houses and sort it from lowest income to highest income. So all the lowest ones on the very top, found someone who's a failure to file, didn't file any tax returns. So it's zero, but yet lives in $1 million house and yet got a $700,000 mortgage. How can that be? Doesn't make sense, right? And when you start, that's called a lead. I start investigating and finding out that she took money out of her retirement, became the administrator of her retirement, and took $1 million out, whatever else it is, and then ultimately didn't pay taxes on it. So that was an easy catch. But that's how we get evaluated, is to find these types of cases. Going to the federal prosecutor's office, many times they'll have us on board. I don't think most people understand the value that IRS criminal investigation has to the federal prosecutors, is because if you've got someone with a psychology degree or someone with a CPA license on your team, let's assume you have an FBI agent who's got a psychology degree and you got an IRS agent with a CPA license. Who do you want looking at the books and records? The CPA guy. Because IRS does nothing but the white collar stuff. FBI can do bank robberies, kidnappers, child support, terrorism, blah, blah, blah. They're a fine agency. But if you really want to know the numbers, you want the accounting nerd. And behind almost every large financial white-collar crime, there is an IRS CI special agent behind the scenes. They don't get a lot of kudos, but they are there because the federal prosecutors know I want this person on my team. And it wasn't uncommon if there was a white-collar angle, and most everything's a white-collar angle, for me to be asked by the federal prosecutors to be on something. So I didn't really have to look for cases. Sometimes the cases found me just because the federal prosecutor would pick up the phone and say, I need some help. I got this drug dealer who's dealing drugs. We can't catch him with a leaf or a seed, but he lives in $1 million house. We know this, this, and this. What can you do for me? I pull the tax return. We got a tax case, just like Al Capone, right? And so now we're taking down a drug dealer, not the street person on the corner, but the main person getting the stuff and selling it, or at least distributing it. We're getting him based upon the tax crimes, not based upon the drug and the meth or whatever else he's slinging.
Now, in your experience, do you find that the drug dealers or even the white-collar criminals that are, say, stealing money, do they report that accurately on a tax return?
No.
Does
That's what makes it so great.
Yeah.
No drug dealer reports all his income, except for I had about one that reported enough to where it looked reasonable. But when we dug down a little deeper, there was so much cash coming in that there's no way that this is legit income. They would claim it as rental income on a house or houses, but then he had real houses, but he was growing marijuana in it. So where are the renters? And why are all the renters paying cash? And why are all the renters paying, not paying the utility bill, but he is? And so you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together and say, no, this is a front for a money laundering drug business, not necessarily a real rental house business, rental real estate empire.
Now, when you get a lead like the woman you were just describing, how do you know whether to take it civilly or criminally?
Good question. There's a couple of variables in all that. One is, in particular, a pattern of years. IRS CI is not interested in prosecuting a case that's not going to go to prison. It's bad publicity. Ladies and gentlemen, you get in the newspaper, there's a press release, so-and-so committed tax evasion and got 0 time in prison. That's not a press release they want. So they know in general what the judges are looking for and what a jury is going to bite on. That's the ones that get our attention. So when we evaluate a case, civilly or criminally, I look at it going, is a judge and a jury going to want this type of case in front of them? Could someone steal money? Could someone commit tax evasion and the money went to the 3 girlfriends, the private school tuition, the nice cars, the fancy vacations? A jury's going to eat that up going, yeah, this person should go to prison, right? It's called disposition of funds. Where did the money go to? If it didn't go to the IRS, where did the money go to? That's an easy case. What makes it difficult is that put this person in prison because, yeah, they committed tax evasion, but the money went to pay for the mother-in-law's brain surgery or brain cancer treatment. No jury's going to want to do that. Same level of crime, but the disposition was different. So you have to look at what a jury is going to want to sink their teeth in, because you don't want to take something to trial and then find them say not guilty just because there's a lot of sympathy for the person, right? So you got to look at that. You got to look at the health. You got to look at the age. You got to look at the patterns. Was this a 1-year mistake or this is a 10-year mistake? 10-year mistakes are easy. 1-year mistake, no, we're not doing that. So you have to weed some of these things out. What I'm really looking for is whether or not, if someone read the newspaper and looked at this article, did they sit there and say, yeah, that person should go to prison? Those are the cases that I wanted. And there's times where I sit there and discontinued a case just because it just wasn't there. There's too many variables and it's just not worth the headache. Number one. Or number two is, it's a 50-50. The guy's really guilty, but is he really that guilty? I mean, there's other people over here I can go after, right? And so I like to compare it to stopping a car. Is 56 and a 55 still, worthy of a ticket? Yes. okay? Do cops stop you for 56 and a 55? No. What we're looking for is the one doing 75 and a 55, weaving in and out of traffic, throwing beer cans out the window. That one's going to get stopped. And that's what IRS CI is looking for, are those most egregious ones to where it needs to be stopped. And society would say, yes, that's the right thing to do.
I have to admit something. For someone who interviews fraud investigators, IRS agents, detectives, and former scammers all the time, I almost got. I got one of those text messages saying I had an unpaid toll and needed to pay it immediately. At first, I laughed, then I clicked it, then I thought, wait, did I actually drive through a toll somewhere? For about 45 seconds, I completely talked myself into believing it. Right before I was about to send money, I stopped and thought, Ian, what are you doing? That's the thing about scams. They don't always catch people who aren't paying attention. They catch people when they're busy, distracted, or in a hurry. That's why I appreciate the security features built into Cash App. When you get the Cash App card, not only do you get access to a ton of perks and benefits like exclusive early access to nationwide concert pre-sales or discounts on popular brands, but you also have extra security with the power to instantly lock or unlock your card right from your phone in just one tap. If a suspicious transaction pops up on your card, Cash App has your back by automatically declining the purchase and sending you a heads up to confirm if it's you or not. Behind the scenes, you can rest assured knowing your account balance is protected by 24/7 fraud monitoring. Spend with a peace of mind today and order a Cash App card in the app or at cash.app/card. New Cash App customers can earn $10 if they use code SECURE10 in their profile at sign up and send $5 to a friend within 14 days. Terms apply. Cash App is a financial services platform, not a bank. Banking services provided by Cash App's bank partners. Prepaid debit cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC. Cash App Visa Debit Flex cards issued by Sutton Bank, member FDIC, and the Bancorp Bank N.A., pursuant to a license from Visa USA Incorporated. See terms and conditions for the Sutton Prepaid Card, Sutton Debit Flex Card, and Bancorp Debit Flex Card. Discounts and promotions provided by Cash App, a Block Incorporated brand. Visit cash.app/legal/podcast for full disclosures. Now, does it also go off a dollar amount too?
It does. Dollar amounts drive the train. There is something called what they call the Sentencing Commission. Every federal judge knows this. A bunch of federal judges and politicians that get together, and every year, or I think every year, they get together and say, what does this crime with this amount of money, how much should that person spend in prison? It makes sense because you don't want a judge in New York having $1 million loss think differently than a judge in LA or the judge in Des Moines, Iowa. You want them to probably on the same page. So in a sense, everybody should get the same type of punishment for the same type of crime, no matter where you are in the United States. It's not perfect, but there is a book. And any defense attorney will look at this book and say, what's the loss? Here is the formula, and here is the range of time that probably can be expected. We know as federal agents what that is. And the numbers change slightly every year. But for the most part, we know that this amount of loss will generate active prison time, which is hence what I talked about. You want something with good publicity. So you know this $500,000, $1 million loss is going to get someone prison time. This $50,000 loss, no. It doesn't meet the formula. No.
Oh, go on, yeah.
No, it doesn't mean that we can't do the small losses. Some people need to go to prison no matter, or at least need to be smacked ethically because they're the mayor. They're taking bribes. $50,000 loss, we'll take it every time because it's a person of trust, right? You got to take this person down. But for the average plumber, construction worker, dentist, $50,000, no, we're not doing that.
What's the most common business? Is it restaurants that are audited, or?
Restaurants are notorious for keeping second set of books. That happens. Things are being more and more less cash. Cash is easy to deal with. Things are more and more debit cards. And so there's less cash in the system and more credit cards. So it's kind of harder to steal money in restaurants when things are just more credit card oriented than cash back in the day. Now it's getting more and more debit cards. The most notorious ones I know are construction. Those individuals that are in construction business, remodeling business, buying building houses, those are the ones that are notorious for this stuff. For whatever reason, they just are. The construction trades business, huge. It can be the dentist every now and then. It can be the chiropractor who is taking the co-pays, putting in one account, and the insurance pays in the other. But that's easy to find, because co-pays are $30, $40, $50, depending on what it is.
Now, with contractors, what are they just saying to the client? Give me cash for this job, and then
it's that, or they will do. They'll go out there and do a job, and someone pays them a check, and they take the check and go down and cash it. Pretty simple. It's not necessarily green stuff, but they get a check and they'll just negotiate it and then take the money.
And they'll keep it off their books.
It'll be off the books, right? Or they will. Here's always a good one. They'll build themselves a house. So you have all these lumber charges, but how do you know which 2x4 went to the remodeling business or went to the personal house? You really don't know. You just don't. And so, they build their house, frankly, expensing it all because you don't know where the 2x4 went.
So how do you investigate a case like that? How do you even prove that?
You would have to go to the foreman and say, okay, who bought this 2x4 and where did it go? In a sense, where did Home Depot or the lumber company deliver it? If they deliver it to the house, probably that. If they deliver it to the site where the remodeling business is going on, it's probably remodeling. It's tricky because you got to get more interviews done to figure out who did what. I worked on a case where a banker was building bank branches. But some of the labor actually went to build his personal Taj Mahal, right? So the bank branches never got built, but he had this huge house. But all the books and records in the bank showed that it was going to the branches were never done, but the Taj Mahal, in a sense, the Taj Mahal was built, and he was convicted of bank fraud. I had a little tangent, part of it, but that's kind of how this stuff works. Is that you get the person who put in the plumbing. Where'd you put in the plumbing? I put it in his house. All right, but you trace the plumbing, it says, it went to branch A, and branch A is still a piece of dirt, so.
Something I still don't understand, too, is the high-profile people like the celebrities, the actors, the sports players that just don't file, for 2, 3, 4 years. You look at, like, Mike the Situation, didn't file on $2 or $3 million and then eventually got convicted. Why is that? Why do you think that is?
Why do you think adults are walking around not filing tax returns, or why do you think IRS picks on them?
I wouldn't say pick on it if it's that egregious. So I guess why don't they file? And they know that money's documented. If a production company pays, there's probably a 1099 issued.
Right. Well, some of it's greed, some of it's stupidity. Frankly, some of it is they didn't probably do it beforehand, and they're not going to do it afterwards. Money doesn't really change people, in my opinion. Money just reveals people. If you're a crook with $100,000, you'll be a crook with $100 million. If you're an honest person with $100,000, you'll be an honest person with $100 million. So typically these character traits are the same no matter how much money they make. So they probably were a failure to file, in my opinion, more than likely before they even made the money. Now when they made money, the lifestyle goes up, called lifestyle creep, and all of a sudden, you would think anybody with that much amount of money would want to be in compliance because you don't want to be on the radar screen. So, it's what people do, unfortunately, and I don't understand why either. Why adults are not paying not filing tax returns. There's a whole world out there. I think the government estimated $600 billion or $800 billion of money's out there that's not being reported. It's called the tax gap, GAP. What's reported and what should be reported He estimates it's in the billions. Just happens.
Now, what kind of individuals are these? Are these just, labor, everyday 9 to 5 laborers? Or are they business
More
owners?
than likely, they're not W-2 because W-2 already have your money taken out of your paycheck. When you work for, your employer, check money's already out. It's already taken out. So the government's not really a victim in all that. It's the small business owners. That's where they get it. Or the cryptocurrency people who are buying and selling and not paying the taxes on it. That's a huge issue. But most of it's self-employed business owners, whether it has 1 employee or 100 employees. That's usually the main ones.
Now, say you take 100 business owners, small business owners. How many of them do you think are actually 100% honest on their taxes?
To the letter of the law,
Yeah.
probably none of them. They like to think that they are. There's some wiggle room. I mean, come on. It's like, when you go out to eat, is it really a business meal or not a business meal? I mean, it happens. There's a lot of gray area in the tax law. You pay your kids, for example. You can pay your kids to do work for you. Well, is it really the fair market value of the services? Can a 6-month-old really make $10,000 a year? Well, I'm gonna put his face on my business card and pay him $10,000. You probably can't get that. It's not a fair market value. It probably is not, right? But they'll do it. And the IRS comes in, audits them, and smacks them around a little bit, going, "This is not a fair market value exchange, and the kid's maybe worth $1,000, not $10,000, so there's a $9,000 difference. Pay the tax on $9,000." It happens. It just does.
So a case like that is a civil case.
It'll be a civil case. It's low loss, right? And it's just a gray area in life that it's not worthy of prosecution.
Now, speaking of gray areas, what about new jobs that have been created, since, say, you working with the IRS back when you first started, or even when the tax code came to be? Look at influencers, for example. That's a whole new realm of a job.
Influencers are a different breed, okay? They are. I can tell you what the civil tax code says. It's probably not going to rise to criminal. Civil tax code is, this is really interesting about the tax law. If I'm an influencer and I sit there and say, "Hey, you in Fiji, the hotel in Fiji, if you give me a free room, I'll put it on my YouTube channel." In the Fiji hotel goes, "Sure, why not? It's a free room." They're supposed to report that as income on their tax return, whatever the fair market value is. So imagine going to Fiji, doing your video. You paid for your airplane ticket, right? You get a free Fiji hotel thing, and say it's $1,000 a night, and you spend 2 nights there. You're supposed to put on a return $2,000 of income because you got benefit of $2,000. You're supposed to do this. This is what the tax law says. Now you got to pay tax on $2,000. You haven't made squat yet, but you're getting a bill for something for staying in a hotel room. It is bizarro, but that's what the tax law says.
So how does that work with casinos that are comping hotels to, say, a player?
Comping is one thing, is like where you're still doing you're getting something out of it, but you're putting money into the system. So comps, no, sort of like credit card rewards. That's non-taxable too. But if you're exchanging a service, which is free video for this hotel, there's exchange. Free advertising, hotel. And they wouldn't give you a free hotel room except for you're offering to do a spot on your video.
Now that hotel is probably also writing off that room too.
Well, there's an expense already. Yeah, exactly. There's an expense already incurred on it. The maid still got to clean the room, and so it's an expense no matter what happens. Whoever stays in there is an expense associated with it. There's overhead just for having that room. Forget about if anybody stayed in it or not. So yeah, they're already going to expense that out. That's no big deal. It's the influencer received a benefit, and that benefit does have a tax number with it.
Now, what if the influencer billed the hotel for the service, but still got a free room too? Do they still have to report that room?
Now you're getting to the realm of I don't want to give tax advice to I'm not going to be a TikTok influencer and give tax advice regarding all that. I don't know the full answer to that.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me would say It's part of the service. It's built into my so I bill you, let's say I bill you $2,000 to do this video and you happen to comp me a room. Don't take this as tax advice, folks, but most likely it'd be fine. That $2,000 of the room being free is just part of the $2,000 let's make it $3,000. You charge someone for $3,000 and you got a $2,000 room out of it, right? The $3,000 I would report as $3,000 as income and be done with it. I wouldn't report $5,000 as income. No.
So now this is a great segue into ignorance, because the average influencer probably has no idea about what you just said is an actual law.
Yes.
Now, say they get audited or criminally charged or investigated and they said they didn't know, what happens?
There's two issues. Number one, civilly, they're going to get their rear ends kicked, okay? Because an auditor will look at that going, well, too bad, too sad, whether you knew or didn't know, here's your tax bill, okay? That's one thing. From a criminal standpoint, there has to be an element of willfulness. Did you know for sure that this was illegal? That's different. And most people don't know it's illegal. So there has to be what they call criminal intent or willfulness. You knew what was right and you didn't do it. That would be the criminal issue. If they were, here's an example. Let's assume that they were audited and they got smacked around a little bit. You can't do this, but they're continually doing it. And then CI potentially could come in and go, wait a minute, you were told 3 years ago to stop doing this and you continue to do this. You knew better now. That adds more to the weight of should they be criminally prosecuted or not. I haven't seen an influencer yet abuse the tax law and still be prosecuted. I don't know the Christies who had a YouTube channel.
I
at
had
one
them
time.
on the show too.
Yeah, the Christies. I know they had but they had a bank fraud issue going on too. It had an extra element to it, not just misunderstanding tax law. And there's some other issues with the CPA and the conversation. So there's more to that story than just the YouTuber walking around with a camera trying to just fly around the world and enjoy trips for free.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen, if any YouTubers, really like audited publicly. I'm sure maybe privately, but on a criminal aspect yet.
I haven't seen it yet, but it'd be interesting to see it. The only person close to that would be an influencer was the guy who did the Survivor.
Richard
Hatch.
Yeah.
Right. He got busted for receiving some income and he didn't report on his return. That was one of those issues. And what really got him, I think, if you look at the indictment, was he went to a CPA, I think he's a return preparer, and according to the indictment, he went to a return preparer and said, what's my tax bill? And they gave him a tax bill. I don't want to pay that. What about if I didn't have that income? Well, here's your other tax. So he had two tax returns, one with the income, one without the income, and he filed the one without the income. I mean, so that one's kind of easy. It's like you went to a tax professional, got the right answer, and you wanted the wrong answer, so you used the wrong answer instead.
So now what happens to the tax preparer in that situation? Are they responsible, or are they responsible for reporting if their client is doing something fishy?
No, they're not. Ethically, they're supposed to do what they call due diligence, ask more questions, and they can always sit there and say, I'm not prepared to return. But return preparers have a standard in which to be criminally prosecuted, they have to be in on it. Being a stupid return preparer is not a crime. There's lots of stupid return preparers out there. There's a lot of them out there. So being stupid is not a crime. Being complicit, receiving information knowing it's not true, or putting down that false information, that is a crime. Now, we go into the willfulness factor. Was it for that one client at one time? They probably won't prosecute that. If they do it for every single client coming in the door, oh, absolutely. I've had return preparers that would put charitable contributions on their clients' tax returns, and you got 10%. 10% of your income was charitable contributions. Whether you gave it or not, they just put down 10%. They know what they're doing. So yeah, you have to put that return preparer in jail.
Now, what does the preparer benefit from? Are they getting a kickback of the return or
more business? Yeah, because you get a client who's happy. Man, I got a large refund. What do? They go tell the next door neighbor, man, this person over here is pretty good. They give you a large refund. Really? And so you just get more business.
Now, there's a difference between tax preparers and actual CPAs or accountants.
They're all return preparers. Return preparers are one of the very few industries out there where you can wake up tomorrow and say, I want to be a return preparer. And the government says, okay, there's no license needed. Now, there's maybe one or two states like Oregon, I think you have to be licensed. But for really, they don't have to have a license. And then you have all the way up to tax attorneys. I mean, so there's a huge knowledge gap between, waking up today and say, I want to be a return preparer, and then, some guy spending 6 years, 20 years of their life trying to understand the tax law. But the IRS says anybody can be a return preparer.
Now, what happens if the preparer makes a mistake? Are you criminally prosecuting the individual that gave the preparer that information?
No, the return preparer, the question is, did they know? That's the question. Did they know this thing was false when they prepared it? Most of them are suspicious, but they don't know it's false. And once again, we go into the willfulness issue of, did this return preparer do this quote-unquote mistake every single time, or was it a one-time deal? Did other clients get the quote-unquote same mistake, right? So mistakes are not a crime. Transposing a 9 to a 6 and vice versa, you're not going to go to prison for that. That's not how this works. But there has to be an element of, you knew what was right and you did it over and over and over again, the wrong thing, to the point where even the dollar amount makes the government look at you going, really? We probably need to put a stop at that. Once again, 75 and a 55. We got to put a stop to this, not a 56 and a 55. So they have to pick and choose. There are some neighborhoods I can go into and spend my whole career going after bad return preparers, because they put in false Schedule C businesses in order to get the earned income tax credit. They'd put in fuel credits. Downtown Charlotte, how many people coming out of this return preparer's office gets the fuel credit for tractors? It just should be zero. Now, in mid-America, farmland, probably more realistic. But everybody out of downtown Charlotte's got a, fuel credit, probably false. But there are whole industries of return preparers, seriously, that do nothing but prepare a false tax return on a massive basis to where they have to be stopped. And people don't like hearing this, but the earned income tax credit is one of the most abused systems in the Internal Revenue Code, because it's called the working poor. And what the return preparer will do is try to get you down to that bell curve where you're in that spot where you're getting money back even though you're putting money into the system. They do it all the time. And it's unfortunate, but Congress allows this tax law for the sake of being kind to the poor. Okay, fine. But it gets abused consistently in certain neighborhoods. Even baby mamas. You got a child. Oh, you got 3 kids. If you give me one of the kids' dependent's name, I'll put it over here. And it's like, I'll pay you $500 for your kid. So they put on the returns. You get return preparers that literally, they pull out a list going, hey, for $1,000, I can get you a $3,000 refund because they got this kid's name in it they bought. And they'll put it on the return. And it's like constant. I've done search warrants. If I see the list of all the kids, all the false dependents, they'll go to homeless shelters, pay $25 to a homeless guy for their ID, right? And sit there and use that thing over and over and over again as a disabled kid. The IRS has no idea.
So now when you criminally bust one of these tax preparer offices, do you then refer all of their clients to get civilly pursued?
You can. More than likely, we don't care. As a criminal investigator, my job is to put that person in prison. The civil side, they're going to do whatever they're going to do. I have no idea what the civil side does once I'm done with the criminal issues. There are some cases where I can disclose information to the civil side. There are other times I cannot. It depends on a certain type of case. But for the most part, I have no idea what happens to them. Sometimes they get audited before I touch them as a criminal investigator. Sometimes the taxpayer never gets caught. It just depends. There's only so many people that can work audits in the IRS. So when you have all these bad things going on and you only have a handful of people doing this, there's a lot of people that just get away with it, unfortunately.
When do you let your subject know that they're being investigated?
Good question. It depends. There are times where I think they should not be told. I'll be what they call covert. We'll be covert about things. Do surveillance. We will do some interviews covertly. We'll get more bank documents to see what's there before we start letting them know. Sometimes you let them know during a search warrant. Boom, search warrant, you're under investigation. Okay. Do I need to do a search warrant in the house with the business? That's one of the things I look at as an agent. Where's the evidence at? And is the element of surprise needed? Other times I can do I may interview the subject within the first week and say, hey, we got a problem. Contractor, right? Hey, dude, we got a problem. You live in $1 million house and make $30,000 a year. Can you please explain to me why is this going on? Before you say anything, you have the right to remain silent. You have to do these types of things, right? And a lot of times they'll shut up. Sometimes they'll try to lie themselves out of it. It never works. Been doing this for years and years and years and years. But it depends on the case. Do I need to be covert for a little while? It's unfair to the taxpayer to be under investigation for a long period of time, and in my opinion, and not go over it and let them know. That's just me. I try to let them know as soon as possible, but I have a job to do. If I have to be secret about it for a little while, I'll be secret about it for a little while.
Do you ever have to go physically undercover, pretend you're someone you're not?
I never went undercover as a person. Did I lie to people? Yes, but never to the subject. If I am sitting there doing surveillance and the little old lady walking the dog going, hey, who are you? The meter reader. Okay, whatever, right? Go on. That's not really an undercover, but you just get out of my face. I'm working, but I can't tell you why I'm working. That's not really undercover. Undercover agents are trained particularly or specialized. So you get into this undercover, what they call cadre, and you're trained as a special agent to what entrapment looks like. You get a false ID. You get what they call backstopped. Yeah, in some cases you get you get an apartment that in a car. There's a whole slew of things going from you do this a little bit or you do this full time. I never was an undercover agent. But when there's an undercover operation going on, there's what they call an undercover team. And part of that team is listening to the undercover operation. In case something bad happens, we're going to come in and knock that door down and save the undercover agent. That's one of the things we do is the protection of the undercover agent is paramount. So if there is an undercover operation where somebody's walking into a business or walking into a junkyard or wherever they're walking into, there's going to be a team of agents already surrounded that people don't know, that if the crap hits the fan, they're coming in and they're going to save the undercover agent. I haven't had a situation where we needed to, but we train for it consistently just in case. It's part of the job. And so there's a lot of times I'm sitting in a surveillance van or wherever else 2 blocks away listening to the conversation. And if someone says help, we're going in guns a-blazing type of thing, But we've been trained to do that, is to extract that agent out. Because no undercover operation is worth an agent's life. No piece of paper is. And so, no, never been an undercover agent, but been on plenty of undercover operations, led the undercover operations, had my cases as part of undercover operations, but never was actually the guy wired up sitting across, from the mafia guy, having this conversation. Nope. I'm not very good at it. Because in some situations, you have to be a little bit shady. You have to lie well. If you took me to a strip bar and said, act like you know what you're doing, I wouldn't know what I'm doing. But there's some agents that would sit there and say, man, they feel like home. They're okay with this. They're relaxed. I wouldn't have a clue. So you want that guy, right? To be that snarky little quote unquote drug dealer or money launderer who can go into places, act like they do, and fit the part. I don't fit the part. I'm a short redneck guy, from North Carolina. You take me to Koreatown in New York and say, do an undercover operation, I'd stick out like a sore thumb, right? You want a Korean agent to do the undercover operation who can fit the profile, who feels comfortable in that area that you're putting them into, if that makes sense. Because they got to fit the profile. And I just don't. I never was asked to. Some people can curse every other word and be okay with it. Not me. I'm too much of a nerd.
Now, you mentioned when you met with suspects, they would try to lie their way out of it. What was the most common ones that you would hear?
I didn't know, or it's only one time, or I don't know what you're talking about, or they would say, that's not really true. I let them lie to me for a little bit, but I'm not going to sit there and be lied to for 3 straight hours. If my case rises and falls based upon me getting a confession out of this person, I don't have a case. The numbers will tell itself. Where the money went to and where the money came from is going to tell the story. I really don't need their confession. It's helpful, but frankly, it's 5% of my problem. 95% of my problem is getting all the money coming from and where it's going to. I'm just interviewing them, frankly, to check the box. And so in most of my cases, I'll read them the rights. Hey, I'm sorry to bother you. There seems to be some problems with your tax returns. Can you mind if I talk? But first of all, let me read your rights. And by the way, Mr. Taxpayer, this is a criminal investigation, okay? I asked you a couple questions, and I'm sorry to bother you. However, don't think about lying to me. If you think about lying to me, just tell me to go pound sand. I'm here to listen to you, but don't waste my time. And most of them will sit there and they'll try to lie themselves out of it, and I'll catch them. I'm like, I'm done. You're lying to me. And I'll walk out the door. I'm not writing a 15-page memo, going back to the office, write all the lies, because it's irrelevant. They're not going to prosecute. Federal prosecutors are not going to prosecute lying to a federal agent with that. It's expected. The judges understand this is the game, right? What's really going to carry the water at the end of the day is going to be showing the spreadsheet. Ladies and gentlemen, jury, he got this money here and he spent it over here. That's going to be the case. It's not about, well, he was interviewed, he lied. So what?
Now, how often are you able to actually recover their second set of books or the cooked books, the ones that are hidden, say from like a restaurant or a cash business that are illegally, running that operation?
I can tell you the biggest source, the pissed off partner, the wife or the girlfriend. They know, and they'll rat you out in a heartbeat. Those are the ones that sit there and say, he's got a second set of books right here, because they're mad. They'll come into the IRS office going, I hate my husband to the point where he's an ex, he won't pay me child support, and by the way, here's the second set of books. Where'd you get it from? I stole it from the business. Okay. I mean, we can take it. We'll take it and we'll use it. Pissed off spouses are the worst. They're the best informants.
So with that, will you just automatically pull up their tax return and compare
absolutely.
that to that, and then
I will interview the pissed off girlfriend and sit there and say, okay, tell me the story. Well, he does this. They'll tell you everything.
What about employees? Do you get a lot of complaints from employees?
Employees, not really. No, it's always the ticked off girlfriend or the spouse. It's never a guy going, I hate my wife. It's always the girl going, I hate him. He cheated on me, whatever it is, right? Whatever the reason is, and they'll bring in the goods.
Now, when the state investigates an issue, do they always refer it to the feds because there might be a federal tax issue going on?
Sometimes it depends. The state sometimes turns things over to the feds just because there may be an interstate nexus to where maybe it's Connecticut, New York, and Maine that's involved. Well, they can only do locally in a county or in a state, and maybe it's bigger than this. So they'll probably talk to the federal prosecutor to see whether or not this is something they want to take. I've had a couple of cases like that where the state started it, brought it because it was bigger than what they can handle. from a jurisdiction standpoint. But most of the states, they do okay job. They're not classically trained like a federal agent, honestly. Not throwing any shade on them, but you can't have a street cop become a detective, right? Street cop has got a criminal justice degree out of some college or community college, right? And then all of a sudden turn him into a white collar crime guy. They can do the bad checks and the unauthorized credit cards, but when it starts getting into the millions and surveillance and all that stuff involved and getting money and tracing, it needs to go to the feds, because this is where we're classically trained at, is for those big cases. And I'm not throwing any shade on the local detectives. They have to do their job. But when it gets too big, you got to bring in bigger guns who have better resources. The IRS CI only does probably 3 cases a year per agent. Your detective's probably doing 50 balancing 50 cases all at one time, right? Federal agents are only doing a handful of cases, so we have to be selective. And it's a good thing, because on average, it takes about 18 months to 2 years to do a case federally.
Wow.
Yeah, because from a financial standpoint, we're not talking about we popped you with a bunch of drugs in the car. From a financial perspective, we have to figure out what's going on. We have to do surveillance potentially. We have to do some interviews. Then we got to go find out where the bank records are at. Then we have to subpoena the bank records. Then we got to analyze the bank records. Then we find out there's more records out there that need to be gotten or subpoenaed. So then we got to get that. And then maybe overseas to a foreign bank account. Well, then I got to get that. So as you start pulling the strings, you realize you don't have all the information. So you're always pulling until you've got a pretty good idea of the full grasp of everything. So it'll take about 18 months to 2 years just to get a case through.
Now, when you're finding someone's bank accounts, is that like a fishing expedition, like shooting subpoenas at different banks, or how does that work? Or do you get a tip to know which bank they're just at?
Good question. The IRS is like a vacuum cleaner of financial information. W-2s go to the IRS. 1099s go to the IRS. What they call FBARs, foreign bank accounts, go to the IRS. People don't know this, but even foreign banks, like in Costa Rica or Swiss banks, turn over information to the IRS. So the IRS is collecting all this information on you. So the first thing I do is I pull up, what do we know so far? Well, we know he got mortgage interest, right? That means he's got a mortgage. We know he's got a 1099 interest income in this bank account, and I just this is my lead sheet. So I start following those leads, and I grab the money. Where does money come from and go to? And start pulling that, So we start with what the IRS knows so far. There's also something called suspicious activity reports. People don't know this either, but the banks are one of the biggest informants financially there is. They are required by federal law to report to the federal government any suspicious activity going on in their banks. And if they don't, they get penalized. So they have to have a suspicious activity reporting group. So let's assume I'll make up a scenario. Someone walks in with $12,000 in cash every single day. 12,000, and it smells like marijuana. They are supposed to write this up, send it to the federal government into a database. So when I, as an agent, 5 years later, am looking at this defendant or potential defendant, I will look him up in this database to see, has the banks reported him on any suspicious activity? And sometimes they have. That may be a bank account I had no idea existed. So it's another lead. And I'll go down that rabbit hole. So just putting all the pieces of the puzzle together. I've actually had to do bank accounts. I've actually had to do, I don't know what you call it, rosters, airplanes. I know that my subject's going from point A to point B. I know he probably has a girlfriend, but I don't know who she is. So if someone flying from New York to Toronto, I'll get that who is on the airplane. I also know he flew from New York to San Diego. I'll get that roster. I'll get another one, and I figure out, okay, who was on the same airplane each time? female so-and-so, found a girlfriend. It's very rare for someone to be on the same plane 3 different times with this guy, right? So more like his girlfriend. I finally found this missing piece, and I'll start going down that rabbit trail. Maybe go interview her, especially if she's ticked off, that type of thing. So I look at pieces of the puzzle in order to find out who my witnesses could be. So I think I answered your question, but it's kind of, you just have to think what I call outside the box. It's not just the flowing of the money, where it come from, where it went to. You have to figure out, are there any other pieces of the puzzle that would be a natural fit to this? I consider a natural fit. In some of it's training, some of it's just being inquisitive about how to find people who know what you need to know, who would be great witnesses against this defendant.
Do you find, or did you find, that people still believe that if you deposit under $10,000, they're safe from any unusual activity? I think our last guest, Brian Watson, he called it tracking, or it's tracking payments, whatever the term.
There's something called structuring.
Structuring, that's what it is.
Right, structuring. If someone, the banks and other institutions, even car dealerships, are required to report to the IRS anything that's cash over $10,000. And some people go, I don't want the IRS or anybody to know about that, so I'll pay them $9,999, so this will never happen. It's called structuring. It's illegal. The best bet is to pay it in cash. Here's the reason why. If you pay in cash, it gets thrown into this huge pile of other forms of paying in cash. It's no big deal. But if you pay $9,999, the bank will write it up, and all of a sudden now you're in this database as being suspicious versus just complying. Well, the suspicious list is a lot shorter than the compliance list. So you're on this naughty list, in a sense, a potential naughty list. Just deposit the money. Be done with it.
How often do you see, say, a business paying another business in cash and one business writing off that expense and the other one not claiming it? Is that common?
It's common in the payroll cashing business. It happens. It's out there. I didn't see it that much where one business was reporting, was one cash to another. Typically, it's not a separate business, but a related business. So the owner owns 2 businesses. So he's doing one and moving money to the other place. I've seen that happen, but not 2 separate businesses who really just work together and have other customers. It's always related somehow, some way.
What was a case that really surprised you that you worked on?
I don't think anything really surprised me. I did work on a case where a little girl was murdered by her adopted parents, and we did a white-collar case on it because, according to the press release, I can talk about what's on the press release, she was claimed as a dependent on a return in which she was already murdered and was still missing. So we used that as a jumping off point to help get some justice for the little girl. Her name was Erica Parsons. And so we used a white collar issue to go after the atrocity, but there was no body. A lot of suspicious activity, but no body. And this is the reason why the federal government came in, was to go after this because it was the right thing to do at this point in time. And then ultimately, a year later, after both of them were convicted of white-collar crimes, the adopted dad showed them where they buried the body. And then a state later on came in and convicted them. They pled guilty to murder charges. And I think one's in life, one's got like 30 years, something like that. But because we used the white collar, particularly tax laws, against these people, we could at least get some type of justice out of it. They ended up getting, I think, 6 years and 8 years in federal prison for a minimal loss, like $30,000 loss. I mean, extremely small. But that was a special circumstance where if we, the federal government, don't do anything about this, they probably won't get away with it. And the federal prosecutors and my agency and other agencies agreed that this was worthy of going after, the Al Capone type of thing. Can't get him on this, but we can get him on that. And so the judge, bless his soul, he's still alive, great judge. He saw exactly what we're doing and why, and put him in prison for like 6 or 8 years federally on a 30,000. I mean, I don't know the exact number, but it's extremely, extremely small loss. But laid a hammer on him because he knew. And you read the transcript; it's great. Laid a hammer on him because he sat there and said, "You did something with this little girl, and you're going to pay for it, even though it's a white collar issue. This is the reason why you're here." And ultimately, it's she now's got a proper burial and everything else. But that was one of the best cases, smallest loss I've ever dealt with, but it was one of the most rewarding cases because at least got some justice for a 13-year-old girl who was mentally handicapped and was just abused.
That's like similar to the Alex Murdaugh murders. They charged him federally for fraud or tax evasion.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. There is a hammer that we can use when it comes to tax law to go after people that deserve to be going after. And it's rare that we do it from this standpoint because of this, but we do it. I say we as the federal government, and I'm retired now, of course, but we do it not all the time. But when you go into federal court, you want to use that privilege sparingly. If we go in there and say, "Your Honor, it's a $30,000 loss," they're going to look at you going, "It better be good." The judge may not say that, but subconsciously they're saying, "All right, this better be good because we only see hundreds and thousands of millions of dollars, and you're doing 30. Why is this?" And so you can't be bringing every $30,000 case into the system.
Now, most of these cases that you bring against individuals for large dollar amounts, are you ever expecting them to repay it?
The federal government expects everybody to repay it.
But realistically,
Practically, no, it's not going to happen.
Especially with the interest and penalties.
Yeah. As the federal, I will try to find the money if we can recuperate it. But at the end of the day, I know it's just part of their punishment, paying the restitution. I really don't care as a federal agent. It's not my job to worry about how this money's going to get paid. We'll monitor it. We'll make sure that you're making $100 a month, $300 a month, whatever the judge determines. We'll monitor it for a little while to make sure you're still in compliance. But for the most part, we're done with the case, find something else.
What's your take on restitution not being tax deductible?
I have no opinion because I haven't even thought about it.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that it's not.
It is not. I guess if you should have, and I'm just throwing this out there, Ian, if a bank robber robs a bank and gets $1 million and then spends it and then has to pay it back, is it still should be tax deductible? I don't know the answer to all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't. I'm like, okay, that's above my pay grade. I don't make those policies.
Yeah.
No one's ever asked me that question, and I haven't thought about it.
I guess I think about it because I pay restitution. And it doesn't go against your income.
Yeah, I understand that, and I don't have anything to say about that.
What do you think was the most egregious way someone has tried to hide money or underreported it in your experience in cases you've investigated?
The most egregious. The ones that I see would be using to hide the money. You're talking about, you got your typical drug dealer. I use drug dealers all the time because they're like so prevalent. They put it in their girlfriend's names, like whatever. It's just common. Or put in their mother-in-law's name, or buy a car and put it in the brother's name, that type of thing. That's just so typical. It's not really egregious. I'm trying to think of most egregious way people have hide money. I really don't think. I do know this. When people try to hide their money from the IRS, the ones that are most sophisticated stick it overseas because it's very, very difficult to find it and get it once they hit overseas. I do know that it's common, not saying it's smart, not even legal, that they'll earn some money, they'll put it overseas, and then they'll have a debit card or a credit card that is to the Cayman Islands, right? So you swipe your debit card, you go to a local restaurant, you swipe your debit card, and it's coming out of that Cayman Island account, not out of your local bank account. So they're living a lavish lifestyle by hidden money, but they're still having access to it. That's difficult because you got to find the receipt in the house and say, oh, what's this credit card? And you figure out it comes from here and it traces there. And some countries do not share information. Like the Cook Islands will not share information with the IRS. Good luck getting information from Russia right now, because Russia and the United States are not happy with each other, right? Now, there was a time where they would share information. Nope, not now. So depending on how the political winds change, the country may cooperate and other countries may not. And then what are you doing? What are you going to do? It's very, very difficult to go after someone when there's no bank statements coming in because they've hid it somewhere and the country's not cooperating.
How did PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, all of those things change things in your career?
They really haven't. They're just mechanisms. We understand that, excuse my nose running. We understand that they're just a financial institution. Transactions by themselves are not crimes. It's the purpose behind the transaction that becomes the crime. So Venmo may have from point A to point B. Okay, why? That's what it comes down to. And then we got to figure out why. Most people don't understand that when you work for the civil issue with the IRS, when you're audited, if you receive income, the IRS is automatically going to say it's income to you, right? The burden of proof is on the taxpayer to say it's not income. It flips in criminal court. In criminal court, you're innocent until proven guilty, and it has to be beyond a reasonable doubt. So I can't walk into there and say he got money from Venmo. And was it income? Was it a loan? Was it a gift? Well, I don't know, but he got something from Venmo. Prove it. What it was for. And that's what we have to do is prove beyond a reasonable doubt what it's for. So I have to get someone on the witness stand going, this is what the money was for. So those entities, it's what it is. It's just like any other bank. You just got to figure out what the money was for. And sometimes it becomes difficult. I had one case civilly where there's a lot of Venmo to the same person over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And it was like $200 here, $250 there, like every other night. This must be a lady of the night type of thing because, who's paying the same woman a couple $100 every couple of days? And sure enough, when you start delving into it, sure enough, he was just paying a hooker, or companionship. You don't call it. And that's where a lot of the money went to was quote unquote companionship.
How has money laundering changed over the course of your career?
The laws haven't changed any. The money laundering laws have been the same since like 1986, I think it is, something like that. It's been around for, 30, 40 years now. The way they're doing it is different depending on how you define money laundering. There is something called trade-based. You know what trade-based money laundering is?
Mm-mm.
All right. Colombia. They make their cocaine. I'll just make something up. Colombia takes their cocaine, they ship it into the United States, right? And the drug dealers sell it. They got to send the money back to Colombia. Well, how do they do that? They got a bunch of cash. They got a lot of $20 bills, $100 bills. How do they get this to Colombia? Well, they can put it on a plane somewhere, but good luck, right? You're probably going to get stopped. So what they'll do, they'll take the cash, they'll go out and buy a bulldozer. So you go get a bulldozer. You pay $100,000 cash for a bulldozer, $200,000 cash for a bulldozer. Used bulldozer. You take that bulldozer, you put it in a shipping container, right? And you ship it back to Colombia. Customs opens up the container and go, oh, it's a bulldozer. Shuts the door, we're done. If they open up the door and go, oh, there's a couple $100,000 in cash in here, different story, right? Suspicious. Bulldozer, no big deal. So the bulldozer goes to Colombia. Now, Colombia, the cartel can either use it, right, or they sell it, and get their money back that way. So you convert cash to a bulldozer and then bulldozer back to cash, or they're actually using it. That's called trade-based money laundering. So they convert the cash from one thing to another. And it's not uncommon in international money laundering. You'll have multiple people depositing money into the same bank account. So the guy in LA is depositing $9,000 cash into one bank account. Somebody in New York depositing $9,000 cash in the same bank account, right? Bank of America, JP Morgan, what do you want to call it? So various sources are depositing cash. The cash then goes, purchases sneakers, okay? And the sneakers are then shipped to another foreign country, and then the sneakers are then sold, and then the money comes back. So that's money laundering all over again. It can be difficult sometimes. It's very ingenious what people are doing in money laundering. Cryptocurrency, it is what it is. It's not that difficult, but it is still out there. Money laundering is really just taking illegal money and making it look good. That's really all it is. So when someone's trying to take their drug dealing money, convert it to a bulldozer, that would be the money laundering aspect of it. So
Now, do you think the government still hasn't really understood cryptocurrency or how to analyze it and I guess regulate it from the IRS perspective?
the federal government prosecutors, particularly the agents, are getting really, really good at the cryptocurrency world. IRS CI, if people didn't know, I think it was about 10 years ago, stood up a cryptocurrency unit in DC and I think one in LA. And they were one of the pioneers, if you know about the American Gangster with Polo, was that Marco Polo? What was the first cryptocurrency dark web? I can't
Oh,
remember.
Silk Road.
Silk Road,
The guy that
yes.
just got released.
Yes, he
Yeah.
got pardoned by Trump.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Silk Road. Silk Road was one of the big things that the IRS put a stamp on it. Secret Service, DEA. There's a lot of people working on that case, but IRS really helped define it. Ross Albright, I think.
Yep, Ross Albright.
Yeah. Helped find who Ross Albright was, because he was under the moniker Dread Pirate
Roberts.
Yeah. From the movie, The Princess Bride. So they stood it up, and then they started doing other cryptocurrency stuff and started getting better and better and better and better at it. So the agents that are trained in it are really good, and they're using good software. The local IRS agent who's got a briefcase and a bad attitude who's come to audit you, probably not. But from a federal money laundering standpoint, they're getting better and better and better. Because people don't know, cryptocurrency typically is on the blockchain, particularly Bitcoin, right? So it's semi-anonymous. There's a record, and they just follow the record. And what they do is called attribution. How do I attribute this cryptocurrency to this person? And they have various tools to do so, and some of it's just wild guesses, but you try to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Screen names, passwords, lots of stuff. It's not just really one thing, it's many things pointing to the same direction that you think you've got a case. I've had a couple cryptocurrency cases, and they're interesting. It takes a little more time, but they're fun. I think they're fun because the people who are using cryptocurrency are a little more sophisticated, and a lot of them are believers. When I say believers, I mean really into it. I mean, they're like, this cryptocurrency is the world, and it's a different breed of people.
Are those just strictly tax evasion, or?
Some of it's tax evasion. Some of them they just don't want the government knowing what they're doing, and I guess by default it's tax evasion. But they just want to be super secret about it. But the IRS takes a very bad taste in their mouth regarding people who don't report all their income, like anybody else who's not reporting their income. Just cryptocurrency bros, they're just a different breed. They just are.
Now, in regards to reporting income, most of these places that will send you money, so say in my world, you get a 1099 from Facebook, a TikTok, YouTube, How many people do you think roll the dice and not report one of those 1099s on their income?
I think usually people who are in the business like you are, who receive 1099s, know it's going to the IRS, and sooner the IRS is going. If you don't report it, sooner or later the IRS is going to knock on your door, going, "Hey, ding dong, you forgot this. You forgot this form. You know, you made $100,000 and you failed to report it." Most people know that. For the most part, it's not really an issue. Um, I guess the question is it willful that they're doing this? And if they're constantly not reporting this income, the IRS may look at it. As a criminal investigator, if someone's not reporting the 1099 stuff, I wouldn't open a case on that because it's like so obvious. I mean, it's they just didn't put it on the form. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's like, no, we're not doing that stuff. There has to be some other egregious thing going on. If they're like in some type of, like I said, they're committing murder or whatever else it is, then I'll probably add that onto it. But by itself, I wouldn't go after a case like that.
Wow, so I wonder how many people just roll the dice not putting one in, hoping, to...
Well, they're going to lose. And because I say they're going to lose is because the IRS has got a database, and if you report, let's say $100,000 on your tax return, and there's $150,000 in 1099s, it's going to kick it out. The computer's going to kick it out, saying, "Hey, you forgot something here. Here's your bill." So you have almost zero chance of getting away with that type of thing.
Oh, so it'll be automatic because of the way systems are...
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the system adds up everything and says there's a mismatch here. It's called a mismatch. There's a mismatch. Please explain yourself. If you can't explain yourself, here's your bill.
So it won't even be accepted, or it gets accepted and then there's...
The IRS will accept your tax return, and then 2 years later they'll compare it to what's reported based upon the 1099s. They'll add them all up and go, there's a mismatch. Here's your bill. It's pretty simple. So when someone intentionally misses it, they're going to get a tax bill later on. It's not going to be worthy of a criminal prosecution.
Now, tips. Do you ever run into issues with tips and tipping in general in the criminal division?
No. There is no way in the world I'm going to put a waiter in prison because he didn't report his $20 he got every now and then. Are you kidding me? It doesn't even meet the threshold of worthy of federal prosecution. It has to be hundreds of thousands of dollars of not unreported income, but tax. So there is just no way. It just doesn't meet. I would have a conscience problem. I mean, is it a crime? Yes. It's 56 and a 55 again. It's just not worthy of our time to go after someone. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, put this person in prison because he was serving lobster and didn't pay the tips that he received. The jury's gonna look at that going, really? We're here for this? I gotta pick up my kids in school in 30 minutes and I'm sitting here in a jury box over this? No, it's not gonna pass. They're not gonna like that.
So then do you think the system's fair or unfair because of that?
I think at the end of the day, you can't put every tax evader in prison. Just like you can't put everybody who's 56 and 55 and give them a speeding ticket. The government has to be judicious. We may not like what they pick and choose, but they have to be judicious on what they're going to do and go after. It is what it is. It's part of life. People will say it's not fair, but life's not fair either. There's only so many resources we can go after people. I think it'd be a travesty to go after a little old lady who's not reporting all her income and try to put her in prison when you've got someone who's living a lavish lifestyle and really cheating on her taxes and foregoing them, no, we're not doing that. I wouldn't do it. I've never seen it done, and I don't think any federal prosecutor with their salt, nor does a judge want to put up with this stuff either. They want the cases that are meaningful, that make society a better place, and I don't think putting an 80-year-old woman is a better place than putting her in prison versus the 30-year-old drug dealer. We just have to make these decisions.
Now, I'll see people on social media, specifically X, I would say, where they say, I'm not paying, taxes or filing taxes to boycott X, Y, and Z, or we should all get together and not pay. Could that even be possible, if everyone got together and not filed taxes?
You could, but I'll tell you a secret. Tax protesters, we call tax protesters, they are filing their tax returns. They just say they don't because they want to sell something in order to get you to buy it. And so they're making money because they're like public enemy number one. I don't want to pay my taxes. See, I haven't been put in prison I've been failing to pay tax returns for 20 years and they still haven't gotten after me because the IRS has disclosure laws. The IRS cannot say it's a lie. They have to keep their mouth shut. Okay? So I can sit there and say, I'm a tax protester, buy my stuff about how, for $199, you can figure out how to commit tax evasion too. Well, as long as I report that as income, the IRS has nothing against me. And so people who think, well, he said, just because he said he didn't file tax returns doesn't mean he hasn't. Because as a criminal investigator, I'd be looking on TikTok. I'd be looking at TikTok all the time for people like this because it's great. What are you going to sit there and say? No, I forgot? When he's on, I've had cases where people are on YouTube committing a crime. And I'd show that to the defense attorney going, Exhibit A. And they're like, yeah, my client's guilty. Yeah, no kidding. But the people who are bragging about it are filing because that's the reason why they're not in prison. It's that simple. You just think they're telling the truth, but they're not.
Yeah, in those same videos, I was telling you off camera that there's this whole lore of, former agents or tax preparers talking about tax tips. You just look at the comments of what everyone's saying. Those are all potential suspects right there.
Yes, and you think the IRS doesn't know this stuff? Of course they know this stuff. The question is Billy Bob, who lives in a trailer, who drives an old pickup truck, yeah, man, the IRS I'm totally against the IRS. Are we going to go after this guy? No, there ain't nothing here. It's the guy who makes a lot of money, who flaunts it. That's the one that gets in trouble. It's easy to commit tax evasion. If you live in a trailer with an old pickup truck and a four-wheeler and just enjoying life, it's easy because you're not on the radar screen. What gets on the radar screen is the person who's got the Ferrari and the other stuff and and have all these things going on. Those are the easy ones to catch. The contractor going out there cutting your grass and doing your plumbing and happens to cut down your trees every now and then, who gets paid in cash or something of that nature, those are the ones that are hard to prosecute and find because they're under the radar screen. There's no records of them earning any money. When you look at their lifestyle, they're like, oh, they're not doing anything. They probably got $1 million in cash in the backyard somewhere in a coffee can. But you never know that because they don't flaunt it. That's the key. The people that flaunt it are the ones that get in trouble.
How often do you feel like personally attached, I guess, to a case or sympathize with the individual? Does that ever happen, especially if you're spending 18 months on one individual?
I have never had a case that I know of that I sympathize with the tax evader or money launderer. If I thought that there was a sympathetic reason that behind this, like, man, I really hate going after this person, I wouldn't open a case. Because if I know I had a sympathetic reaction to it, the judge is going to have a sympathetic reaction, and the jury is too. So what am I doing here? Because at the end of the day, my audience is who? 10 people in a jury box who may not even have a high school education, who don't do their own accounting, who don't reconcile their own checking account, and don't prepare their own returns. I got to convince them that this person's worthy to go to prison for. So that's my audience, and then a judge as well. But that's my main audience. And if it's not going to be, heck yes, this guy's guilty, he should be put in prison, I don't want to be part of that. So I got to think about the normal person who's paying their taxes, what they want the IRS to investigate and not investigate. So I've never had a sympathetic, as far as I know, boy, I really hated doing this. If I had that feeling, I'd try to close the case. I've never had that feeling. I've always had the people that cheated and lied and, in my opinion, were worthy to stand in front of a judge and give account for whatever they did.
Do you find that the juries actually understand these complex, maybe tax cases or understand the numbers, the forensic accounting aspect? And if they don't, do you think they just convict because they think the person's guilty because they're there in the first place?
I do believe that there is a bias, whether we like it or not, that the jury is going to automatically be sympathetic for the prosecution. Because why are we here if it wasn't really a good case? There is that. Okay. And we understand that as prosecutors, as well as I work for the defense now. We understand that it's an uphill battle, because why are we here if the person's really innocent? The IRS CI in particular is not going to bring a complex case in front of a jury. We have to simplify it. He lives a lavish lifestyle. It doesn't equal the tax return. Pretty simple. Can you live this lifestyle on your income? You're making $70,000 a year, nurse so-and-so. Can you live this lifestyle and make $30,000? No, I cannot. This is the reason why we're here. I mean, that's kind of the story you're selling to the jury. They'll understand that. We don't get into complex things. You know what depreciation is?
Yeah.
Okay. We're not going to say, ladies and gentlemen, jury, put this person in prison because they depreciated something over 5 years versus 7. I mean, we're just not going to do it. It's a technical issue. It's not going to, no. There has to be something that the average common person on the street going, yeah, can't be doing that type of stuff. So when we do a case, we simplify it to its very common denominators that anybody can understand. So my audience needs to understand you can't prepare a tax return and claim X dollars when it's Y. And it's so egregious and we're so long a period of time and the amount of money is so bad that we have to put a stop to this person from doing it. If that story can be sold to a jury, then that's what I'll recommend prosecution on.
Was it hard to get comfortable in front of juries or just even testifying?
Nah.
Or did it come natural to you?
It was sort of natural. If you're not nervous, you're not taking it seriously. It's sort of like being nervous from a game, from a big game that you can play in, because you're playing in major leagues when it comes to federal court. I mean, it's very pomp and circumstance and revere, and there's no playing around. It's not state traffic court by no means. So you got to take it seriously. But I enjoyed getting on the witness stand, and the reason why I enjoyed it is because you don't know what your cases are until someone cross-examines you on your case. I took it as a learning experience because I want to be better as an agent. I don't want to make the same mistake twice. If I made a mistake here, or maybe it wasn't fatal, but it was kind of like, yeah, I should have done something differently, it'll come out. I'll learn from it. I'll take my lumps a little bit, and then I'll walk off the witness stand and continue on. We're not talking about ethical issues. We're talking about, why didn't you do this? Or why didn't you do that? Or, you're right, I should have done something a little slightly different. Client's still guilty. The defendant's still guilty. But yeah, you scored some points on me, defense attorney. Okay, I can take my lumps. I'm not going to take it personally. But I enjoyed explaining the cases in front of a jury. I think I'm a natural storyteller, not fairy tale, storyteller, to where I've used nursery rhymes or nursery stories in front of a jury, explaining things. Like, can you explain, this concept? Sure. Goldilocks and Three Bears, not too cold, not too hot, just right. I mean, you have to meet it just right. And this person met it just right every single time. And the jury, I look at the jury and they're nodding their heads. I'm like, cool. They're getting what I'm saying. I'm taking a complex, potentially complex. The defense is going to make it complex. I'm going to simplify it so you can understand it. So I will use things like, what about this? Like, well, it's pretty simple. If you have kids, if you do this, 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 and this, why is every single thing, if you can't take your natural thinking process and ignore it, if you get kids? No,
not
okay.
yet.
All right. If you got kids, you say, little Johnny, don't eat that cookie. And you walk out of the kitchen and go in the hallway, and you hear the chair scooting across the linoleum floor. You hear little Johnny stepping on it. You hear the cookie lid come off. You hear the unwrapping of the cookie. You hear him saying, good, right? And then you walk into the room and you see this empty wrapper and chocolate all over his face. Little John, did you eat the cookie? No. Now, as a juror, as a parent, you know very good and well, Johnny ate the cookie, right? You give that type of story in front of a jury going, listen, in order for you to believe that this person didn't do this, you got to ignore this, you got to ignore the aluminum floor, you got to ignore the cookie jar sound, you got to ignore the wrapper, you got to ignore all this stuff. As a parent, would you say that this person ate the cookie or not? Well, yeah, they would. So I try to simplify things to where they understand from their own life that if all these pieces of the puzzle come together, the natural conclusion is this, right? And a jury go, oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. And I thoroughly love court. Some people, the one reason why forensic accountants get paid good money to explain the story of the money trail to a jury is, number one, they do a good job, supposedly. Hopefully they do a good job. Number two is they can articulate their point of view. Number three, their stuff can be cross-examined. And number four, they can explain it to anybody in that jury can understand. They can relate to them. One of the questions I do ask, have you ever been in a jury before?
I was in my own trial.
No, I got it.
But then, yeah, in state court, I made it through like the first day of them picking a jury, but then they disqualified me.
Got it. One of the questions typically is asked of a juror is, what is your name? Okay, fine. That's kind of secret, right? What do you do for a living? I'm a nurse. I'm a plumber. I'm a retired, whatever else it is. One of the things I like to ask the prosecutors or the people I'm working for, what profession are these people in? That one's a banker. This one's you don't know their names, but you kind of know who they are. Okay, good. Because in my mind, I'm going to relate this to a banking issue. I'm going to relate this to a nurse. I'm going to relate this to whatever. I'm going to be able to touch some souls in that jury box because I want to be able to relate this concept to them, right? And so I think that's what makes a good professional is knowing who my audience is and then relating the story to them so they consider, yeah, I get that. That's me, okay? That's how I work. Is it cheating? I don't think it's cheating. I think it's just smart. You got to be able to touch the person that you're trying to, your audience. They get to pick and choose whether someone's guilty or not guilty. But I want them to understand the concepts, and then they can take that evidence and other evidence and make their own conclusion.
Now, someone that's accused of, filing a false tax return, do they even have any shot of winning at a trial? And do those cases even go to trial most of the time?
Oh, yeah. You're talking about filing a false tax return?
Yeah, just
all the time.
And they go to trial.
91, 95% of all IRS cases have a guilty verdict. I mean, it's when you're up against the IRS CI, just realize it's probably not going to end well because number one is they do a good job most time. There are fair employees. It depends on who you get.
If they get you, they're losing.
Well, you're behind the eight ball on that one. But they do a multi-year case. So it's not just a 1 year case, it's like 5 years. It's hard to get away with something you did 5 years and same pattern over and over and over and over and over again. It's just difficult for a jury to look at that going, yeah, it's all a mistake. Because mistakes don't put you in prison. It's the intentional mistakes that put you in prison. So when I get a case that the contractor is just not reporting all his income, right? Or the chiropractor, or the doctor, or whatever else it is. I've only been in trial a handful of times. Most of it, they plead guilty because what are they going to sit there and say?
I didn't do it.
I didn't do
They're
it.
to roll the dice, get a jury that sympathizes.
Exactly. I didn't do it. Okay, fine. You gotta go against all 20 witnesses on the witness stand going, yeah, he knew what I did. He told me to do it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you're guilty. Sometimes in my job as a consultant for defense attorneys now, I can't change the facts. I can try to help the narrative to get the best deal possible. Sometimes my client's just guilty. Sometimes they're not as guilty, but just guilty, right? So maybe the government is trying to steamroll them and you're trying to back that sucker up a little bit. But they're still guilty. Let's get them 18 months, not 18 years. And that's why I get paid the money that I do is to get as much, negate as much as possible, whittle down that loss as much as possible, trying to get more sympathy in front of a jury or in front of a judge. It happens. Sometimes you have people that are innocent. And I get called on the case in the very beginning of it. I see what happened. They're really the victim. Maybe the boyfriend did the bad stuff under their name, right? So I go in front of an IRS and say, here's the issues. And the IRS understands where I'm coming from. They'll drop the case. And they'll go after the boyfriend. I'm trying to point them to the right defendant, not my client. I've had a couple cases like that where but I get paid by the attorneys to look at this Rubik's Cube from all places and take my experience and my education and say, okay, where's the weaknesses in the case? Where's the lack of willfulness? What can we craft a story? Not fairy tale, craft a story to make this person most sympathetic as possible, and then go with it. And many times I'm successful in doing all that. Not 100% of the time, but I know that going in, 80% we can get away with it, 20% not. And most of the time when I'm in that position, we do well as a defense team.
How long were you with the CID for?
I was with them for almost 21 years.
Wow. Why did you decide to retire? Is that a forced retirement at that, or?
Thank goodness, no. But yeah, when you turn 50, I turned 50. When you turn 50 and have over 20 years in, you can retire with full benefits, which means that you get a pension and you also get health insurance. So when I turned 50, I did the number crunching, and when I did the number crunching, I determined, it didn't really pay to stay. If I made, frankly, when I did the math, because I'm a math nerd, I had to make $36,000 a year doing something else to keep my lifestyle. Like, do I want to work 50-hour weeks for $36,000 a year? No, I'm not doing that. I might as well go ahead and just retire and just do whatever I want to do. Stock groceries, take money out of my retirement account, do something. You can't let this badge identify you as a person. It's what I did for a job, but it's not who I am. I enjoyed authority. I enjoyed, scaring people to death in some sense. I would walk into the room, Ian, with an FBI agent. Hi, I'm FBI agent so-and-so. I'm IRS so-and-so. The people would say, I don't want to talk to you. Him I'll talk to. They'll talk to, they're scared to death of the IRS.
It's scary.
The IRS has a lot of authority and fear automatically. They fear the IRS more than any other agency out there. And it was enjoyable getting instant respect. Don't get me wrong. I never wanted to abuse it. But there was a nice that when I walk into a room, people are like, oh crap. That's a good thing. I'm here to help.
Does it feel weird being on the other side now? Maybe even going up against people you worked with before, or even the agency, I guess.
I will tell you this much. The agency as a whole, the people in the agency that I work with probably still like me. But at trial, oh man, you're getting the stares. It's like you turncoat on them. Yeah. And it's funny because I would mentor some of these agents. I would sit there and pour my life into them, give them all the wisdom I can because I want them to be good agents. And I was helping them through the process. And I tell them, don't do this, do this. I'm helping them become better agents in a short period of time because it takes a little while to become a very good agent. Some of them have the skill set, some of them don't. And then you go to trial and you're sitting there with your guy that you mentored. And some of them were like smiling and give you a hug, not in the courtroom, in the hallway where it's private because you can't be hugging, the opposite side. But once it's game on, it's like Major League Baseball. You can sit there and say, I like you as a friend, but I'm here to win. And same thing here. I'm here to win. And there is that element of You've turned to the dark side, it's fine. But I know the secrets. I know what you did wrong and what you didn't do wrong. I know how this played. So imagine someone who knows what the playbook is and knows when you're making a mistake. No one wants that against them. And it's just common nature, human nature. So yeah, I still have friends in the IRS CI. I can still have cordial conversations with them. I can have what I call backroom conversations with them going, hey, this is not a great case. Here's the reason why. And let me explain this to you. When we walk into this conference room, we'll go at it. But I'm just forewarning you, this is where I'm going with this. And I want to give them common courtesies. I don't want to surprise anybody, any of my friends, right? But I want to be having an honest conversation with them. And I want them to have an honest conversation with them. Robert, I really don't know if this is a great case or not. Okay, fine. We understand each other. I'm not here to screw them over. If my client's guilty, they're guilty. But if my client's got a good reason for what they did and maybe not as guilty or maybe not worthy of prosecution, they went 56 and 55, let's lay it out. Ultimately, the federal prosecutors in IRS are going to make that decision. But that's one reason why I get hired by defense attorneys is that I can have that conversation genuinely because I want what's right for the agency, but I also want what's right for my client. And like I said, sometimes my client is guilty and they're just not as guilty. Sometimes the IRS didn't do the work, and I'll call them out on it. You didn't do the work, and it's embarrassing for them. Well, I can't help you didn't do the work. Next time, do the work. Hopefully they got their butt kicked enough to where they're like, I ain't doing that again. Robert Nordlander may have his next case. That's where they need to up their game. They shouldn't be sloppy. And the Pareto principle, 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. Same concept. 80% of the work by the IRS CI is done by 20% of the people. There's a lot of donkeys in that stable, and there's some thoroughbreds, but a lot of them are donkeys. And donkeys and thoroughbreds don't mix. And if you get a good thoroughbred of an agent, great. Sometimes you get some donkeys and they don't do a good job, and it's sloppy. And unfortunately, some of them don't care. It is what it is. So, working for the opposite side now, the defense side, I enjoy it. It's a good living. You do get the stares. You do get the federal prosecutors going, he's not worthy to be on this witness stand. What are you talking about? And I'm like, I spent 20 years with you, just last week. I was getting awards by you, a couple years ago. Now I'm not worthy. I mean, give me a break. But we've had these arguments, but that's not my argument to make. The defense attorney will make that argument. Going, Your Honor, he got awards. He's done this for 20 years. Now they're saying he's unqualified. Give me a break. The prosecution's got to bring it up. They're going to lose more than likely. And you get on the witness stand and you explain whatever you got to explain. But yeah, I do get those stares. It's fine,
Now, when we hear about the layoffs in the IRS, is that the investigators, like your former self, or is it that just more the civil side of things?
It's more the civil side of things, the layoffs. Doge came in, and wiped out a lot of people. And I would disagree with how they did it. No one asked me my opinion. If Trump called me today going, how would you make the IRS more efficient? I would say you need to be like Survivor. Kick people off the island. Because there's a lot of dead weight in the IRS. There's a lot of lazy people. There's a lot of people who are there because, they were there last week. And if I ran a group, and I ran a group for a little while, about 10 agents, I could probably keep 4 and have the same efficiency and effectiveness than 10. I know who my top 4 agents are. Let me get rid of the other 6. But if the government came in and said, okay, you got 10 people here, which 6 should go? These. They know who the dead weight is. What Doge did is come in and go, anybody with less than so many years is gone. Well, that doesn't take care of the person who's been there for 10 years who's a ding-dong, right? And you may have gotten a CPA, MBA who's really gung-ho and smart, and all of a sudden you fired him because he didn't have enough time in. That's not how I'd have done it. I'd say, which of these employees need to go? That one, that one. Boom, get rid of them. But they didn't do it that way. They went by based upon tenure, and that's not how I would have done it.
And I feel like that could apply to most government agencies or even corporations in general.
Oh yeah, exactly. But to me, it's a lazy way to fix quote unquote fix a problem. It doesn't really fix the problem. It just makes the problem. I don't know. The people who are working hard want the dead weight gone. And when you get rid of people just arbitrarily, it doesn't change the culture. The team is still playing bad because you just got rid of all the rookies. Okay, so what? Well, I don't care if the rookie's first draft or last draft. Well, you got rid of all the rookies. Well, you should have kept the first draft, the top draft ones, and get rid of the 4-year-old guy who's just been around and been around. So I don't know what to say. I don't think CI really lost anyone. And there were some retirements that were optional. Hey, if you leave now, you can get paid until whatever. And they took those early retirements. I don't blame them, but I don't think they were cut. What really is stinky, honestly, was the new agents that came on board who put their lives on hold, who probably quit their jobs to go into training. And then the government says, sorry, there's nothing here for you. So now they left their employer, their health insurance, their wives, probably their spouse. Mostly it's mostly men. They put their lives on hold. Their wives and kids are relying upon their income, right? And now all of a sudden you fired them. And now you have probably good quality individuals who now have to go back to the private sector and find another job because this is their dream job, and they just, for some reason, arbitrarily, no job for you. Those are the ones I have sympathy for, because I was that guy who literally quit to go into training, and I would hate for me to have to go leave a decent career for another one just to find out, sorry, no, can't have you. Why? Because of some arbitrary cutting, so.
What do you think is the most important lesson your career's taught you?
People are people. There are some sympathetic people out there that just do the wrong thing and just got caught up in a moment, and yeah, they're guilty and they should be punished, but the judge ultimately gets to decide how to work that stuff out. Most people have, particularly when I did the tax evasion and the money launderers, I've had, you talk about sympathy. I had one case where the guy grew up in the wrong house. Decent guy, grew up in the wrong house. Tried to get away from it, got sucked back in by the family that was just narcissist, right? And got into the drug dealing type of thing. Really had everything going for him. But because of his family ties, just got sucked back in because of the easy money. And I was kind of sympathetic to that guy. And he had to pay his lumps, and he went on. But he was just a decent guy. Other ones are just narcissistic people that just think they can get away with stuff, and they need to be smacked down a little bit. It just the way it was. I really didn't have much sympathy for those type of individuals. I do know as an investigator, particularly from my personal life, and this growing in, that there's two sides to every story. And before you assume evil, assume incompetence. There's some type of law out there. If you Google it, I forget what the law is, but give people a chance to explain themselves, because there's two sides to every story. Not everything that I see is, not all that glitter is gold. Okay. And so, Lord of the Rings references, by the way, if you know anything about that. There may be an explanation for it. At least give people a chance to do that. That would be one thing. Number two is I had a great mentor, a federal prosecutor, who taught me a lot. whether he knew or didn't know it. He used to say, the truth has many friends, but a lie walks alone. If something is truthful, there's going to be a lot of things that's going to point to it. If something's a lie, it's going to stand up by itself. If I told you I went grocery shopping today, there's probably going to be a clerk who remembers me. There's going to be a credit card receipt, right? That's going to show all that. There's going to be a surveillance camera of me walking in, buying stuff. There's going to be a lot of things in there that's going to point to, I went grocery shopping today. If I didn't go grocery shopping, but said I did, prove to me you did, and you don't have it. So as a forensic accountant, I know that if something is truthful, there's going to be a lot of corroborating evidence around it. If something's a lie, there's not going to be. And that's another thing I learned is look for the corroborating evidence. If this is true, what else must be true? There should be surveillance, credit card receipts, people who saw you, blah, 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 that type of thing.
Well, Robert, I appreciate you coming on the show today. This was such a fun episode.
Well, thank you, Ian. I do appreciate it. I will let you know I do have a couple books out there, and you can go on Amazon to get it. I did write a new book for those who are in divorces. Hopefully, you're not going through a divorce anytime soon, Ian. It's called "I Want My Share: How to Find Hidden Money to Protect You and Yourself from in Divorce and Child Support."
See, this is what you need to be talking about on TikTok.
I should be, and I'm going to actually. I made some videos on it, and it's coming. It's coming to a TikTok or a YouTube short, coming toward a show near you. But there's stuff out there, and I have some websites, forensic CPEs for those CPAs who want to be like me or want to learn like me. I have that out there. I have my own website at nordlandercpa.com. They can go to. I got some books on Amazon if they're tax professionals. I want to know what goes from a civil to criminal. There's a book out there called Criminal Tax Secrets. And it tells you about how things go from this to this and what the IRS CI, how they evaluate it, like we talked about today. So there's lots of resources out there about uncovering hidden money and what it takes to get in trouble with the IRS. It's out there, Ian. But thank you so much. I'll be on the podcast. It's always fun.
Yep, and we'll have the links in the description of this episode for you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. I'm a big fan. I'm glad to see what you've built. It's been very fascinating. Congratulations.
I'm happy to have you. Thank you.
You've taken lemons and turned them into lemonade.
Thank you very much.
That's good.